Welcome back to more FPL content. This will be the best free hit team for Game Week 3, and you can see the clean sheet odds on screen right now. Man United are top, despite losing to Grimsby Town on penalties in the Carabao Cup. They are facing Burnley at home, and they should produce a massive response as Ruben Amorim is under massive pressure. Nottingham Forest are second, with a 43% probability of keeping a clean sheet against West Ham at home. Chelsea are third in that local derby against Fulham. Aston Villa are fourth against Crystal Palace. Tottenham Hotspur are fifth in that home tie against Bournemouth, and Wolves are sixth, facing Everton, also at home. And Burnley are last, with a 13% chance of keeping a clean sheet against Man United away, and other algorithms suggest they have a 9% probability as well. All these stats are taken by the website fantasyfootballpundit.com, and be sure to check out my recent videos for the top 10 captains. I produce lists like this, and you'll see the final versions in the deadline stream on Saturday. And keep your eyes peeled for the predicted lineups, where I also go through my predicted score lines for every single fixture in Game Week 3. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content for FPL and UCL fantasy, and check all the links in the description. I'd highly suggest you check out the Discord server so you get all the updates in terms of price changes, goals, assists, bonus points, you name it. And there's also my Spotify. Leaving a 5-star review goes a long way to supporting the channel. Let's try to get this video in particular to over 200 likes, and we're closing in on 35,000 subscribers. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. My overall squad value is 100.5 million, but selling prices are different to purchase prices, and when you buy a player, you need them to go up by 0.2 million in price to gain 0.1 million in terms of selling value, and I would only have 100.1 million to spend on this 15-man squad. But it does help if you have some of these players in your squad already, and that way you won't really have to, find other compromises and downgrades to then build this ideal free hit team. It's all about the starting 11, and the major difference between this and the wildcard is that this team is specifically designed for Game Week 3, because afterwards your team resets back to how it was before you activate the chip, whilst the wildcard enforces permanent changes to your squad. Check out that video for the best long-term team in FPL, and also my transfer tips for 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. But let's start off with the two goalkeepers. I wouldn't recommend going for too expensive options in this position, because you can't bench boost and free hit at the same time. It's impossible to use two chips within the same game week. But I think with just this one goalkeeper, you'll be in a great position to keep a clean sheet and build that solid platform for the rest of your squad. As you saw in the intro of this video, Nottingham Forest are second in the clean sheet odds, only behind Man United, with a 43% chance of keeping a clean sheet against West Ham at home. And I think Matt Sells would be a very solid option between the sticks, and I would have more confidence in him compared to Onana or Bayindir. And we have seen rotation, of course, between those two so far this season, with Bayindir starting in the Premier League and Onana in the Carabao Cup. But I think Matt Sells is a very solid choice, and he'd be right up there amongst all FPL goalkeepers, despite the fact that in terms of FPL points so far, he is joint 14th with Bayindir with only 4 points. But I think that will change very soon, and Nottingham Forest have some very appealing fixtures on the horizon. West Ham is one of them, and there's also the likes of Sunderland and Burnley as well very soon. But it's all about Game Week 3, of course, with this free hit team, and I think a clean sheet is possible against West Ham. That is currently in my scoreline predictions, and last season it was a 3-0 win for Nottingham Forest at the City Ground. But the backup is simply Dubravka at 4 million. He'll start against Man United away, but I would always start Matt Sells between the sticks. And later on, using the website fpl.team, I'll show you the starting 11 and discuss the captaincy. But things get very interesting in the defensive line, and it's all about the teams you want to cover and being very careful about any defensive double-ups. You might think I'm crazy for even suggesting a Man United defender after conceding 2 goals against Grimsby Town. It easily could have been 3 or 4, but De Ligt has been very solid so far this season. He had a great performance against Arsenal in that 1-0 loss, and against Fulham he also scored defensive contribution points. But Dorgu will be the more exciting pick at wing-back, and he also saves you a bit of money in the process. And I will show you later on, using the website fpl.team, some alternatives, because you might not want any Man United players, or maybe just one in the midfield. So I'm going to show you one team which has a few United players in there, and I still think they can deliver against Burnley despite a torrid start to this Premier League season. But De Ligt has been very solid. I know we can always look at a club and kind of banter them and say they're all crap, but I think De Ligt is one of those exceptions, and he's had a very good start to this Premier League campaign. So I think at 5 million, he could be quite underrated, and he's also going to be a massive differential for your Game Week 3 free hit team. and I think Cucurella would be the opposite of that, a very template option, but there is a good reason for that sort of thing because Cucurella has had a good start to this season. He also showed a lot of promise in the Club World Cup, and in the previous Premier League campaign, he started virtually every single Premier League game for Chelsea, and he is so important to them. But the signing of Hato does mean that Cucurella could be rested from time to time. That won't be the case against Fulham at home, though, in Game Week 3, just before the international break. So Cucurella will start, and at left-back, he can bomb forward at times, give you goals and assists from open play, and he's got a lot of different avenues to points. Even with defensive contributions, he could be quite decent from time to time. The same goes for a Nottingham Forest defender, and the only defensive double-up I'm recommending with this squad, and I'm going for Milenkovic. I think he could score a goal against West Ham from those set pieces, and he's also got the DEFCON potential, and Nottingham Forest, you're really investing in them for that clean sheet potential. So I think having Sels and Milenkovic is a nice combination. Over the course of the season, it remains to be seen whether Milenkovic is better than Murillo, Aina, and Nico Williams, and it might be worth saving 0.5 million with those two latter options. But I think on a free hit, you'd rather go for the more expensive Milenkovic, who scored plenty of goals last season and got a lot of fantasy assists. He was such a presence from those set-piece scenarios, and I think he could do that against West Ham and potentially score a goal. And if he can do so and combine that with a clean sheet, you're looking at a massive return in the process. But the other two defenders are basically there to fill out your squad, and Ezri Konsa is one of them. Aston Villa ranked quite highly in the clean sheet odds, as I showed you earlier, and against Crystal Palace at home, I know they really struggled last season against the Eagles, but I think Aston Villa are still a decent defence. Their main issue in this new Premier League campaign is scoring goals, with 0 so far in this campaign, but I think that will change very soon. And Ezri Konsa is now back from suspension, and he's also in my FPL team, so be sure to check out my team selection podcast to see my transfer plans, with Cole Palmer being a major talking point. But the final defender costs 4 million, and it could be Goodmanson, Esteve, or Enilo Mandava, and I'm going for the latter against Brentford at home. I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet, and it's worth saying that the Bees have won 2 consecutive games now. So they won 1-0 against Aston Villa in Game Week 2, and they also got a very impressive win away from home against Bournemouth in the Carabao Cup. So I think Brentford would be the favourites to win this game, but Enilo Mandava is simply there to fill out the numbers and be an enabler at 4 million. This gives us plenty of money to invest in the midfield and forward line, and I think it's going to be very difficult to narrow it down to just 5 midfielders. Bruno Fernandes was subbed on in the second half against Grimsby Town and scored his penalty in the shootout. In fact, he did it twice, but I think with Fernandes, he is going to have so many avenues to points this season, and even against Fulham, when he missed a penalty, he was able to salvage something and not produce 0 points because he scored DEFCON, and that's where you can see the appeal of Bruno Fernandes, the amount of avenues he has to points, and once United click, I think Bruno Fernandes will be a very solid option in the midfield, but we can't rely on the Red Devils just yet, and they're lacking that chemistry in the attack, which I discussed in my recent podcast. But if I were to rank their midfielders right now, it would be Bruno Fernandes first, Matheus Cunha second, and Mbeumo third. Amad Diallo could be a nice punt against Burnley if he starts at right wing back, but if you look at that team selection against Grimsby Town, only a handful of players who you would expect to start against Burnley were in that lineup. Matheus Cunha was one of them, and he missed a penalty, of course, in the shootout. Mbeumo was another one who scored, but then missed the decisive penalty in the end. And I think with the likes of Dorgu and Amad Diallo both starting in that game, as well as Diogo Dalot, it does cause a few maybe team selection headaches, and you're going to be having some issues about determining who's going to start. But I think Amad Diallo would get the nod at right wing back. He could be worth that sort of investment on a free hit, and I think Dorgu at 4.5 million will still be very appealing. He's been one of Man United's best players so far this season as well, and I think Cunha's been their best attacker, which isn't saying much, but he is showing signs of long-term sustainable performances. He's got the shot volume, he's causing problems to the likes of Arsenal with his close control and dribbling, and I think Cunha will be a good choice against Burnley. He has 1 assist in 2 games against them throughout his career, and Bruno Fernandes has scored once, of course, which I discussed in my recent videos as well, and Bryan Mbeumo has also performed very well against Burnley too. So I think any one of those options could do the business, but I would only go for 2 of them, it's worth saying, and not for a triple up in that United midfield. I think that'd be way too excessive, and even some of you watching might be thinking that one United player is already bad enough. Having a triple up with De Ligt, Fernandes and Cunha isn't really a viable strategy, but I will be showing you an alternative squad later on, so stay tuned for that as well. The third midfielder is from Tottenham Hotspur, and whilst Brennan Johnson has been the standout, I would recommend Kudus, who has 2 assists in 3 games against Burnley throughout his career, And if you also stem to other competitions, it goes up to 3 assists in 4 games. So I think Kudus is a decent choice here. And he's not going to score many goals, but he can get the combination of goals and assists and give you plenty of returns throughout the season at 6.6 million. You've also got Semenyo from the same game if you're backing the Cherries to cause an upset. But Tottenham Hotspur have started this season very brightly. They're in second place in the Premier League table right now with 5 goals scored, 0 conceded, and they just played Man City away from home. But the fourth midfielder is Ismaila Sarr, who haunted Aston Villa last season with 5 goals and 2 assists across 3 matches. That includes a brace in the FA Cup semi-final on top of an assist. He has really tormented Unai Emery's side over the years, and he has scored 7 goals against the Villains. So I think he could be a very underrated punt for Game Week 3, and he scored, of course, against Nottingham Forest in the previous game week. So I do like this pick, even over the likes of Mateta, but this is really a fixture-specific sort of choice here, and maybe you'll have different opinions of this. And of course, I was very bullish on Ollie Watkins last week because of his record against Brentford, and we all know how that turned out. So sometimes you can't look too much into the past, but I do think you've got the evidence and also that confidence that Ismaila Sarr could do the business against Aston Villa, who are ranked quite highly in the clean sheet odds, to be fair. But the final option is from Newcastle, and Harvey Barnes might be my favourite against Leeds away, but Anthony Elanga is still a decent pick. Osula could start as a 5.5 million forward, which would be of interest, but Anthony Gordon was the one I was looking at. And if you look at his last 14 games, by the way, Anthony Gordon has 0 goals, 0 assists, and 2 red cards, but he was showing a lot of promise in the opening game weeks. He had 3 shots against Liverpool before his red card, and in game week 1, he had the most shots of any player with 7 against Aston Villa, but we can forget about him for now, and he won't be back until game week 6 when Newcastle face Arsenal at home. Harvey Barnes is my favourite as a game week 3 punt, but there isn't enough space for these 5 midfielders and the 3 forwards. The full captaincy list can be located in my best wildcard team video, and Chris Wood is ranked extremely highly. I also talked about him in the heat maps and the team weaknesses, and of course West Ham have conceded 8 goals so far this season, and Chris Wood was mightily impressive against Brentford back in game week 1, scoring a brace, and I think he's a great choice here, and I wouldn't mind captaining him over Mohamed Salah, Erling Haaland, Bruno Fernandes, and all the top-ranked options for game week 3 specifically. And speaking of which, Erling Haaland does make it in here, facing Brighton away. He was quite underwhelming against Tottenham Hotspur. He had 1 or 2 decent moments, especially with a pass he gave to Marmoush, but in game week 1, we saw the best version of Man City and Erling Haaland, and maybe Spurs are just a bogey team for the citizens, and they should still be right in the running for the Premier League title. I think this is just a blip, and they could make up the points, of course, this weekend with Liverpool and Arsenal facing each other, and I think Erling Haaland could cause a lot of problems to Brighton, who have looked a bit shaky so far this season, despite winning 6-0 in the Carabao Cup during midweek. But the third and final forward is going to be a very template option in Joao Pedro. The ceiling might not be too high because Fulham are a decent side, and I think it could be low scoring, but Joao Pedro can still get the only goal of the game and then maximum bonus points. He is that sort of player, and in the absence of Cole Palmer, who will probably miss out, as discussed in my recent videos, Joao Pedro should be on penalties, and he's an expert penalty taker, as we saw in the previous campaign for Brighton, and he's had a great start to his Chelsea career, as we saw in the Club World Cup, which I covered throughout the summer. In game week 1, he was a bit underwhelming against Crystal Palace, but against West Ham on Friday night, he scored 15 points courtesy of a goal and 2 assists. I think this front line is arguably the best you can build right now based on current form and also the capabilities of all these players. And when you combine that with the fixtures, particularly in the case of Haaland and Chris Wood, I think we've got a very solid platform for the free hit. The starting 11 is as follows. Matt Sells is facing West Ham at home. The same goes for Milenkovic to double up on that Nottingham Forest defence. De Ligt and Cucurella would complete this defensive line with Ismaila Sarr, Kudus, Cunha and Bruno Fernandes in the midfield. Chris Wood, Haaland and Joao Pedro would definitely start in this team. And on the bench, Dubravka, Harvey Barnes, Konsa and Reinildo Mandava. The expected points is 59.2, and that's with Haaland as the captain. But for some reason, FPL.team are really bullish on Bruno Fernandes, and the expected points rises to 61.6 with him as the captain. But I would personally go for one of Erling Haaland or Chris Wood. I think Fernandes is still a decent captaincy punt, and he will definitely be under the radar now with that United performance against Grimsby Town and their start to the Premier League season. So I wouldn't discount it fully, and even the likes of Ismaila Sarr could be captain. He is also my top 10 list, which I talked about the other day. Joao Pedro is also of consideration, and Tottenham attackers like Richarlison, Kudus and also Brennan Johnson are still not too shabby in that regard, but I think it's between Haaland and Chris Wood from this 15-man squad. But I'm going to show you something else where we have less United coverage, only Matheus Cunha remains, and if you want to make another downgrade elsewhere, like Pedro Porro to a 4-point family and defender, like Dorgu, then you could upgrade Cunha to Bruno Fernandes. But Matt Sells would still be the goalkeeper here. Pedro Porro, Murillo and Cucurella is the defensive line, and if you also need 0.5 million by any chance, you can downgrade Murillo to one of Aina or Nico Williams. The midfield still has Sarr, but Brennan Johnson takes Kudus' place, and Harvey Barnes is now in the starting 11, facing Leeds away. Matheus Cunha is in here with Wood, Haaland, and Ollie Watkins, but if you're not too keen on the Aston Villa star striker, you can just downgrade him back to Joao Pedro and then use those funds to get Fernandes for Cunha or make a few other adjustments to your liking. And on the bench, there are a few other choices that are new, so forget about Dubravka and Reinildo. There is also Danga Ouattara, who scored on his Brentford debut, and there's also Collins. Both of them are facing Sunderland away, and you might even want to start one of them in Game Week 3 on the free hit. So I think this kind of narrows down the options in every single position about the players you should be looking at. And even with Matt Sells in goal, there are other goalkeepers to consider, like Robert Sanchez, for example, or maybe you take the punt on one of Bayindit or Onana, but I wouldn't recommend that whatsoever. And like I mentioned before, something like this where you do Pedro Porro down to Dorgu and then Cunha to Fernandes could work very well. And using my budget, I would have 0.1 million left in the bank. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think we should go for Salah on a free hit or any other Liverpool players, potentially even Arsenal? But I think one of the key avenues and advantages of the free hit this week is to avoid that Liverpool-Arsenal fixture, which is going to be very tough to call. I think Liverpool have the home advantage, of course, but it's still going to be a very interesting game. And in terms of the points potential and the high ceiling, that can be found in the other Premier League matches throughout matchday 3. That concludes the best free hit team for Fantasy Premier League for the upcoming match day, and keep your eyes peeled for that Saturday deadline stream. I'll be going live around 9 AM in the UK, which is 2 hours before that official deadline. I'll be answering all your questions, locking in my final FPL squad, and also FPL challenge, which I talked about in my team selection podcast. If you want to see all my other content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content. And there's a lot more headed your way. The Champions League draw is being made on Thursday, the 28th of August, and very soon you'll be seeing some first drafts for UCL Fantasy. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky for the latest FPL and UCL Fantasy updates. Check the Discord server and get all the updates for Fantasy Premier League there in terms of price changes, the goals, assists, bonus points, lineups, you name it. There's also my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. You can click the join button on YouTube or type in patreon.com/FPL Dylan. There's also my Spotify, the FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, and leaving a 5-star review on my podcast goes a long way to supporting me and the channel. Thank you very much for all the support throughout the summer, and we are closing in on 35,000 subscribers, and very soon, not only will you have FPL content, but also for UCL Fantasy.